Hey everyone, Antonio here, and welcome to the masterclass. And today I'm going to break down how I went from $0 to $10,250 in passive income through real estate investing in less than 2 years. In this video, I'm going to break down the exact steps that I took from going from a complete newbie, having no clue where to start, all the way to making over $10,000 a month through real estate from my 12 rental units. A couple things we're going to cover is first, my story on how I did it. Second, a breakdown of the steps that I took to get to my first property. Third, some advanced strategies I use to scale my investments. And fourth, how you yourself can get there step by step in 2 years or less. So let's take it back. Growing up, I never knew that there was anything else out there other than getting a job when it came to making money. I wasn't taught by my parents to invest or start a business. But after I graduated college and my first software engineering job, I literally said to myself, there's no way I could do this for the rest of my life. I didn't want to be in a cubicle. I didn't want to have to answer to my boss and ask him when I could take days off because I didn't want to have to be seen as a slacker. But more importantly, I wanted to work and spend time on things that I cared about, friends and family. I had to work on projects that didn't really matter to me. What I really enjoyed was helping people and helping them solve challenging problems. But those problems had to matter to me. I couldn't just be told to do it from someone else. Another thing I wanted was to wake up and fully control my day and time, but there was no way I could because I had to go to work from 9 to 5 at least in order to make money to pay for my rent, my student loans, and all the other stupid stuff that I started buying because I even had a job. And that's probably why you're here too. You want to live life on your terms. You want to be financially free so this way you can do what you want when you want to do it. Maybe you want to work on a passion project or a business. Maybe you want to help other people like I'm trying to do through this. Maybe you want to retire your parents like I wanted. Maybe you want to travel the world. Maybe you want to be able to take a vacation and just not have to ask another person if it's okay for you to do that. If this is you, then you're in the right place. So let me tell you a little bit more about my story. Back at that software engineering job, I was making $63,000 a year pre-tax. My monthly income after tax was about $3,365. Remember this number for later, it's gonna come super in handy. While I was at this job, I witnessed 3 different layoffs, all of which let go 20 to 25 people, and most of them were men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, typically the providers of their family at the time. These men were walking out of their offices, crying, saying that they didn't have money to pay for their mortgage because they had spent it all on other things and they had no savings and no investments. I was sitting here, 22 years old, looking at them 40 years in advance from me, saying that I would be exactly like them if I don't change my path in the way it's going right now. So that motivated me to really look up what it took to make passive income. Everywhere I looked online had options from stocks to crypto to Amazon FBA to drop shipping to starting your own business. But the one that was tried and true that kept showing up over and over and over again was real estate investing. See, for me, I really cared about 2 things: control and that it was passive, okay? These were 2 things that mattered to me in whatever I was gonna do. A business is not passive, okay? It's very active. Control happens a lot in business though, so that's the pro of having a business. In the stock market or crypto investing, you have no control, but it's very passive. What I wanted was something that had a good balance between the 2, and real estate investing has that. So it was at that moment that I realized if I want control and I want passive income from an investment, it has to be through real estate investing. So then I do what any other newbie would do when it comes to learning about this stuff. They'd first pick up books, they'd go to YouTube, they go to a podcast, they learn about this stuff. With each podcast, with each book, with each YouTube video, I felt more motivated. All of a sudden, I was like, wow, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to invest in real estate. This is great. I can do it. And then all it would take was 1 or 2 days later, and I would realize that I had no clue what to actually do next. The information in all of these books were super overwhelming. There was so much, and I had no clue exactly where to start and what to do first. I was afraid of making a mistake that would cost my entire life savings. So that fear of not wanting to make a mistake was holding me back for 4 years. I was stuck in a phase known as analysis paralysis, where I would overanalyze everything and never take action. So let's fast forward 4 years later. I'm now 26, I'm living in New York City, and now I'm getting paid $150,000 a year as a senior software developer. I was making more and I was saving more, but I still didn't invest. It wasn't until one day in July of 2019 when my landlord sent me an email and he said he wanted to raise the rent on me for the next lease for 15%. I realized in that moment that I needed to be the owner, not the renter. So What did I do? I pulled all those books back out, okay, and I broke them down. I dissected every single part of them. What I was looking for was a step-by-step process, maybe even a formula. All I needed was something that would make me feel confident about what I was doing to get my first property. Confident that I would be making money and not losing money right off of the bat. Everywhere I looked, it didn't exist, so I had to create one from scratch. The first thing I had to do was pick a strategy that aligned with my goals. See, as a beginner investor, you've probably said this to yourself multiple times. I think I'm gonna wholesale because I wanna learn about investing and I wanna generate some cash because I don't have any. Or maybe you said you wanted to flip because you wanted to make a lot of cash quickly. Or maybe you said you wanted to get in rentals because you wanna make passive income. See, each of these three strategies, wholesaling, flipping, and rentals, are all different. They have their own books, they have their own formulas, they have their own ways to analyze properties. Different cities work better for different strategies. So by not getting specific and clear in which of these three you were gonna do, you made yourself overwhelmed. And this is what happened to me. I ended up going with rental property investing because it is the only way of all three that is passive. The others, there are passive ways of doing it, but it is more active than passive. This was the most passive and most reliable of them all for me. This is why I chose this one. And don't worry, towards the end, we're gonna break down how you actually decide between each one based on your situation. Not only that it was passive, but I literally had no clue how to paint a wall. Okay, so there's no way I could flip. There's no way. I didn't know anything about that. And then lastly, because rental property investing is the only one that allows it to be really passive, it's the only one that allows you to be financially free, which is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be financially free to retire my parents first and then myself. And I'm working on those. And so rental property investing was for me. After I had the strategy, the second step was to pick a location based on data. As I hinted in the last step, not every city is good for each strategy. Once you've picked the strategy, you need to find the location that allows you to implement that strategy. See, every city is not good for you to invest in as a beginner. Beginners usually don't have that much cash. So if you try to invest in an area like New York City, like I was trying to do, you're not going to be able to find anything. Some cities are better for flipping because the values are higher. Other homes are better for rentals because the home values are lower and the rent prices are higher. But you don't want to invest in just any city around the United States. You need to use data to drive your decision making so you know you're making the best decision for you. So you want to look up things like the crime rate, the unemployment rate, the population growth, rent prices, home prices, property taxes, and landlord-friendly states or not. We'll go into each one later and explain why they're important, but let's just for now assume that this is what you need. So like I said, there was no way I could afford anything in New York City. So what I started doing was I started comparing cities that I'd never been to and some cities that I have heard of that are growing and some cities that I lived in the past. And it was clear to me after looking at all the data that I should invest in Ewing, New Jersey. All the homes were under $200,000 and the rents were a little high and I had lived there for 5 years. Then once I had the location down, I needed to figure out where the money was gonna come from. I only had $30,000. How was I supposed to afford a $200,000 house? That's why the third step is about the money. Where is it gonna come from? This is where I learned about all the different types of loans out there, what I could do to qualify, and which ones were available for me to use. Luckily, I already had a good job, like I said, and I had 30K in savings and had pretty good credit score in the 700s that allowed me to do this. So I literally called up a bank and I asked them if I could get pre-approved, and they actually pre-approved me for $965,000 for an FHA loan, which is only putting a little bit down. That was great. A pre-approval is the piece of paper that shows that you're actually capable of going out and buying the house. So now that I have the money and I have the location and I have the strategy, the last step is making sure you analyze properties for profit. Over the course of a couple months, I analyzed over 200 properties, and I spent every weekend taking my bike from my apartment in Manhattan all the way to Penn Station, and then I took the train from Penn Station down to Trenton Station in New Jersey, which is about an hour and a half to 2 hour train ride, and then I had to take an Uber, or hopefully if my parents were there, they were able to pick me up and drive me to the houses to go look at the properties. I spent all day, multiple Saturdays doing this. After seeing a bunch of properties, I made offers on 9 of them. In the end, I got 2 offers accepted. One property fell through before I was able to close on it, and the other one ended up being my first property. I bought that in November of 2019. Originally, I was planning on buying it all by myself, but 1 week before closing, my dad and my brother ended up asking if they could be a part of it. So they gave me $15K each, so they gave me me total 30K and I gave 30K total for the down payment, and we switched from a 10% down loan, which is what I was gonna do on my own, to a 25% down loan with my brother and with my dad. Right off of the bat, this property that we had was making $1,000 a month in profit. And it finally felt amazing to be on the owner side of things, not on the renter side of things. After that first month where I saw the $1,000 come in, I was hooked. There's only one problem. I had no money. I just spent all of it on the last property. My dad used all of his cash. My brother used all of his cash. No one in my family or friends seemed to have any cash to invest with me. So what the hell was I gonna do? Was I just gonna save for another 2 years, 3 years, and then do it again? So I had to figure out ways to get money the non-traditional route. That's when I learned about 2 advanced strategies that other investors use that wasn't really taught to me as a beginner. The first one was a cash out refinance or reverse mortgage. If you remember, everyone told me that they didn't have any money, but a lot of older people I knew actually owned their houses. And what a cash out refinance allows you to do is, if you own a house, it allows you to take a loan out on that house of whatever the value is and use that money for whatever you want. It's like the bank gives you a mortgage on a house that you already own instead of a mortgage on a house that you want to buy. The second thing I learned was the BRRRR strategy. It stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. You first buy a house, hopefully cheaper than you need, then you fix it up, and then you rent it out. After it's rented out, you go back to a bank and you do the refinance, because now you own the house. You pull the money out of the house into the refinance, and you use that to then repeat. You pay off whatever loan you had, and you go buy another property. So then it clicked. If I combined these 2 strategies and I partnered with someone that had a home, I could take the money out of their house, buy a house, and use that money again and again and again and again with the BRRRR strategy. And my dad owned his house. So I asked my dad if he would partner with me and we would get the loan under both of our names. But like a traditional Italian American, my dad was very scared to take out debt. I explained to him that we would partner together on the house. I would use it to buy another house, fix that house up, and then use that money to pay off the previous loan. And so the debt would only be for a year. Because of that, he was okay with it. He was skeptical, but he did. So I ended up buying 2 more properties at the beginning of COVID using the money from the house. We got it rented and we fixed it up. Now, a year later, this is now March of 2021, my dad actually had COVID at the time. And I called him and I said, hey, let's work on getting the refinance for these properties. Now that we fixed them up, they're worth a lot more, and we can now get the refinance and pay off the other loan. But as I mentioned, my dad actually had COVID and he actually couldn't walk for 2 weeks. Now, my dad was a contractor, so his whole job is on his hands and knees. And when he was sick, I think he realized if he didn't start investing in real estate, then he would be stuck having to work for the rest of his life. And he saw what the other properties were doing. So because of that, he said to me, instead of paying off the loan that we have, why don't you take the money and use it to buy more properties? And I was excited to do that because I wanted to scale. So I took the money out and I used it to buy 2 more properties. That leads me to today. We have 6 properties in total. 1 was a piece of land that I didn't really talk about in the story. It's a whole nother program, but we're building on that and we're gonna flip it. We have 12 units in 4 different states, and we have a total of $10,250 in rental income coming in every single month. Now, the profit from that $10,000 is $4,348 per month. If you remember, what I was making from my job was $3,365 per month. Except the difference here was that I built this source of income in half of the time, and I did it without having to go to college to learn for 4 years, all while only working 1 or 2 hours a week virtually. And just so you know, I'm being completely honest with my numbers. I'm only 28. I'm not a millionaire touting his Ferrari. I don't live in a mansion. In fact, I'm renting at my girlfriend's mom's house right now to save money so I can buy more properties. I didn't come from a rich family. Instead, the opposite. I ended up being born into a low middle class immigrant family who had a ton of money issues passed down from generations. I just used whatever resources were available to me. I'm just a few steps ahead of where you guys are at, and I know you can meet me here if you just follow these next few steps. So let's break down how you can go from 0 to 10K. Before you can get to 10K, you need to focus on how you're gonna go from nothing to something. So stop focusing on that end goal, and instead let's focus on how we can go to our first property, our first little bit of passive income. So the first thing you need to do is get clear on your strategy. There's 3 different types. Remember, there's wholesaling, there's fixing and flipping, and buy and hold. Let's break down each one. Flipping is when you buy a house, you fix it up, and it looks really nice, and you sell it. You might want to flip if you understand all the things that it takes up to fix up a house. You have some starting capital for the rehab. You're looking for something a little bit more active that can replace your job right away, and you're looking to make a quicker, higher return on your cash. Now, wholesaling is when you're the middleman between a seller seller and a buyer, not a real estate agent, but for an off-market property. Wholesaling might be good for you if you're looking for something more active, if you have tons of time on your hands, if you don't have that much capital to start with, and you don't want to actually deal with any of the maintenance of owning houses. Now, rental property investing is when you buy a house, you rent it out to tenants, and that income you make every single month is used to pay off all your bills, and whatever's left over is passive income. Rental properties are for you if you're looking for passive income. If you have at least a little bit of capital to start with, you are in it for the long term, meaning you're buying and holding for a long time, and you want the tax benefits of owning real estate. So which one will you do? You must get clear on this before we can move on to the next portion. Otherwise, you're gonna get stuck, overwhelmed, and not know where to start. All right, the second portion is picking a location based on data. Let's discuss how you can do this step by step. The first thing you need to do is brainstorm the list of cities that you're gonna do research on. So I would ask myself questions like, where are people moving to? What cities do I know are growing? What cities are other investors investing in? What cities have I lived in? What cities have I worked in? That kind of thing. Then you wanna look up each of these factors. First is the crime rate. The crime rate is important because the higher the crime, the less likely people are gonna wanna live there. And if people don't wanna live there, that means the people you're gonna get are probably not as good of tenants. Those tenants might not pay rent, might not care about the house as much, and you're gonna have a lot of vacancies because it's an area that a lot of people don't wanna live in. Your home values will not go up and they'll probably go down over time. The second factor is the unemployment rate. This is how many people in the area do not have jobs. If the unemployment rate's really high, that means people don't have work. If they don't have work, they can't pay you rent. If they can't pay you rent, you don't make money. Also, if they can't pay rent because they don't have a job, they can't buy a house. If they can't buy a house, that means home prices won't go up, rent prices won't go up, and it's not good. Also, if people have more jobs in an area, typically that means more businesses and more people there, which also is really good for crime, which improves it over time, and overall makes everything go up. Next up is population growth. This is how many people are moving to or from an area. The more people that move to an area, the higher the home prices, the higher the rents because there's a high demand. And the opposite happens. If there's less people moving to an area or there's people moving away, home prices will drop and rent prices will drop because there's lower demand. Fourth is home prices. This is really important, so make sure you pay attention. See, the home price factors in two places. One, if the home price is really high, then you have a high down payment. If you have a high down payment, it makes it harder for you to start as a beginner because you're just saving money from a job. Second, if you buy a really expensive house, then your home price will be high. If they're high, then your mortgage will be high. Now, your mortgage is typically your number one expense on a property. So if your mortgage is really high, then guess what? You're not gonna be able to profit very much because you're gonna have high expenses every single month. So we want low home prices because that means lower mortgage, lower expenses, and lower down payment, which usually means more profit and more scalability. The next thing you're looking for are rent prices. We want high rent prices because if you remember, rent prices are our income on a property. So the more income, the higher the profit. Next, you want property taxes. Property taxes, again, are another expense on the property. So areas with higher property taxes are worse because that means you're gonna have higher expenses, and higher expenses means less profit. So we want lower property taxes. And last, you want to find an area that is landlord friendly. Each state and each city have their own laws that factor in things like when you can evict someone, how long you can hold on to security deposit for, how often you could visit the property. All of these things are important to you as a landlord. They protect you down the line. I'm about to go through my first eviction right now, and I would not be doing this if I lived in another state. It would have been a lot easier to get rid of the tenant ahead of time. So you want to find an area that's more landlord friendly because over the long term, these laws are going to be there to protect you. At the end, you want to look at each city and all of the data points, put them on a spreadsheet and look at them and compare and figure out which one is the best based on the numbers. If the crime rate's lower here and the population growth is better here, that's great. You might want to lean towards that. Now I'm going to give you a big hint here. The most important factor is price to rent ratio, the ratio between the home price and the rents. Those are the two biggest factors that'll help you determine if a property is going to make you money every single month or not. Now, once you have a city, the next step is to figure out where the money's gonna come from. So you need to figure out how you're gonna qualify for a loan. There's different types of loans. Each type of loan has different options of what you can do to qualify for those loans. So you need to learn about the basics. Typically, a conventional lender will look for 4 things at least. 1, 2 years of income from a W-2 or a self-employed job. 2, a low debt to income ratio, less than 43% usually. 3rd, a decent credit score, at least 620 and up. Some are as low as 500. And then 4, the savings for the down payment, the closing costs, and 6 months of what is known as PITI. That is your mortgage, taxes, and insurance payment every single month. Now, don't worry if you don't have money for the down payment. Let's go over a few options that you can do to lower your down payment and be able to get a property quicker. The first type of loan is owner-occupied owner-occupied loans. These are loans that allow you to live in the property for 1 year, but they allow you to get in with a lot lower of a down payment. Things like an FHA loan with 3.5% down, a 203K loan, which is a rehab loan with 3.5% down, a USDA loan with 0% down, a VA loan with 0% down, and a conventional loan with 3% down. The second type of loan you might want to look at is a hard money loan. This is a high interest rate loan that only lasts for 6 to 18 months. I know that's really quick for you to have to pay it back compared to a 30-year loan, but hear me out. You only want to use this if you know what you're doing. You have to fix up the property or find a way to increase the value of the property significantly in that short time frame in order to pay off a hard money loan. But the best part about a hard money loan is they'll give you money for the rehab and they'll pay up to 90% of the house, meaning you'll only have to put down 10%. Now, there's two ways you can lower the down payment on a property. The first thing is known as a down payment assistance program. This is where the government will cover up to 5% of your down payment and closing costs. Sometimes you won't even have to pay it back if you meet the qualifications. And second is seller paid closing costs. This is when you negotiate inside the contract that the seller pays your closing costs up front and you pay a higher home price at the closing table. For this one, you'll want a letter of pre-approval to prove that you can actually buy a house that's a little bit more expensive than what they're offering. So call up a lender to make sure that you can get this. Once you got that pre-approval letter that says that, hey, I'm good to go, I'm ready to buy, the next thing you need to do is look at properties and analyze them. Every single day, as properties come on the market, you need to look at them and analyze them. First, you need to figure out how much a property rents for, and then what you're going to do is subtract all of the expenses. Things like the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the property management, all of the utilities, HOA fees, PMI. And then you want to save money to the side for repairs, capital expenditures, and vacancy. So the formula for the profit on a rental property, profit is known as cash flow. Cash flow is equal to income minus expenses. So you're looking to make at least $150 per month in cash flow. But how do you know if this is a good investment? What you need to do is calculate cash on cash return on investment. This is equal to your first year's cash flow divided by your closing costs and down payment. So this is typically a percentage, like 8 or 10%. What this percentage means is how much of your initial investment you'll get back in your first year. So then what you can do is use this to compare if this house that you're gonna buy at an 8% return is better than buying something in the stock market for a 5% return or an 8% return. Or you could use it to compare it to crypto or your friend's business. You're looking for at least an 8% return on your cash flow. This way, your money will make more than the stock market when you consider appreciation and loan paydown and tax benefits. Now, if you find a property that meets your criteria, then what you need to do is make an offer. Don't wait. Tell your agent that you want to make one. So, real quick, here's a quick overview of what you need to do to get your first property. 1, you want to pick the strategy. 2, pick a location based on data. 3, figure out where the money's going to come from, what kind of loans, and how your down payment is going to come together. And 4th, you want to analyze deals and make offers. Now, this will help you get property number 1, but then what happens after you get that property and you want to scale? See, what happens here is you're back at step 3 at figuring out the funding. You need to figure out where you're going to get the money from to buy property number 2 when you just spent all of it on property number 1. Now, this is when you start looking to your network of people who you trust, like your friends and family. And what you're going to do is see if there's someone out there that would partner with you. The truth is that most people probably won't, especially early on when you have few properties. But as you get more and more properties, the more likely people are going to want to partner with you. So what you need to do is find someone that has a large amount of trust with you, that is willing to take the leap. So a really close family member, a really close friend. Another way is you could use a hard money loan or partner with someone to do a cash out refinance or fix up your current property and do a cash out refinance. Once you have the money sorted out, then it's time you go back to step 4 and you start analyzing properties again. Once you find one that works, you make another offer. And if that gets accepted, you have property number 2. It's a repeatable process that you can do over and over and over again. It takes a little bit more work when you get started, I'm not gonna lie. But the more properties you have, the more cash flow you have coming in, the more experience you have, the more trust you have from other people, the easier it gets for you to scale up. It is very exponential. Now do these 4 steps and you will get your first investment property.